What's the difference between the Eucharist and Protestant communion? Well, spiritual lineage. We get into that in the second part of this conversation with Joseph. Prepare. Hello everybody and welcome back to the show. I'm Tarzan Bonanno and this is Joseph. Alright, let's get into the conversation.
So yeah, what do you think that would make a difference within the Protestant world? Like, if I'm trying to imagine what it would look like if people started being like,
receiving him body, blood, soul.
This is you're right about this. We shouldn't be like these unblessed cups of wafers of grape juice or Hawaiian bread like they used to at my mom's church, just little cubed Hawaiian bread. And
I mean, Hawaiian bread's pretty good.
I'm telling you, looking forward to that, because they had the little cubes of Hawaiian bread and the Welch's grape juice, and it wasn't a bad host, let me tell you.
Fortunately, it was leavened, so I can't work in the Western Catholic Church.
It was 100% leavened and delicious. I don't know. Yeah, so the point is that the priest has to be the one praying over.
Yeah.
Nobody else can make it acceptable.
No.
Other than priests, cardinals, bishops, popes.
Yeah. That's it.
Why? Why is that?
Because Jesus established. He gave his disciples the
run that down a little bit, because I find this to be interesting. And this is your response to this question when I asked you in passing one time when we were just chatting in the foyer. This kind of it threw me for a loop. It reminded me, like I always say, it reminds me of Reiki. And you roll your eyes just as you did now, and you're like, well, the enemy's always going to counterfeit, is what you say. But you run this down a little bit, because I think that this is an important point. And I know that there's a lot of modern Christians that are just well, I don't, and I kind of say this to be completely honest, to be full disclosure. I don't know if I'm I quite understand submitting to the Pope and all of this, part of Catholicism that it seems kind of a bit much to me sometimes, but this checks out in my head. What's going on with the spiritual lineage idea? Break that down a little bit.
Okay, so what you see in the gospel is we first start with Paul, St. Peter, and he asks, "Who do people say that I am?" Right? And they're like, John Baptist, Elijah, blah, blah. The crazy man down the street. Probably. That's not in the Bible, but,
they were thinking it.
Okay, but who do you say that I am? And out of everybody, First Peter, he says, you are the Christ. Right? You're the one of God. You're the one sent. And Jesus says, it's not by flesh and blood that you know this, but by my Father in heaven. And so, Simon, I now call you Peter, and upon this rock I will build. Right, so that's the go-to for the papacy. There's other checks for it as well, but he gives him the key to bind and loose on earth, which would bind and loose in heaven.
Yeah.
He later then also gives the forgiveness to the rest of them. Whoever sins you forgive are forgiven, and whoever sins you retain are retained. Right? All the people who are able to do it, they were all at the Last Supper. The institution of the Eucharist happens in the Last Supper.
Yeah.
Only they were given the word of institution. Only they were given the commission to go forth. And so when we get to the book of Acts now, well, Judas was one of us, right? Judas Iscariot, the guy who betrayed Jesus and put him basically put him on the cross. He might as well have put the nails to his hands himself. He was one of us. Well, we have to fill it. So they worked out that who is going to be the next one.
Yeah, that happens time and time again. There's a problem that comes up, and they come up with a solution.
Yeah. Somebody dies, and we have to fill that slot. And they give it to Matthias. If they're not going to live forever, they don't. Most of them get martyred, all except for John, who literally at the end of his life had people bringing him out like on a quick, carrying him for him to give a homily, and all he would say was, "Love you, children." That's all he could say at the end of his life.
Yeah.
He was so old, he couldn't
That's
do
amazing.
it. He's the only one who died of an old life. But if they're all going to die, then the church dies. So they have to create something. So the apostles come up with more apostles. St. Paul. St. Paul becomes an apostle only because he saw Jesus in a vision, but nonetheless, he gets added to the rank.
Yeah, and I would say not only because that, but also because of the works that he did subsequently. That was what caused people to take him seriously. It was like, well, no, he's really making some major ground for the way. So, like, we can take him seriously based on his actions.
And you see in St. Paul's writings, like, people are like, if St. Paul was around today, America would be getting a letter, right?
It's so funny.
The thing is, though, all of his letters were to his friend,
Yeah.
the priest, those people the bishops that he put in place,
Right.
right? And he gave them the words of inspiration. We're reading letters to bishops and priests.
Yeah, and
were then read to the congregation later.
And they're very specific about laying on of hands. Anytime that happens, anytime somebody is put into a position of leadership or power, there was laying on of hands.
Yep. Anytime. And it was always from a bishop to the younger.
Yeah, and they were always made sure to be filled with the Holy Spirit, too, before they proceeded any further.
Yep.
That was like a prereq.
Which would be baptism.
Yeah.
Which would be part of the baptism moment.
Right, exactly.
And so, you see it immediately. I think it's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
And you read it throughout all of church history, too.
The comparison that, I can't remember if you said this or if this was a dot that I made in my head, is that there was a physical lineage up until Jesus, and from that point on, he set up a spiritual lineage.
Yeah, that would be the Levite, right? Those would be the priests for the Old Testament and for the 12 tribes of Israel.
Yeah.
And then upon Jesus, right, the church, I also want to point out, this is kind of integral here. In the book of Malachi, he mentions that one day it'll be the Gentiles who will be leading, right? That they will be able to do the very thing that priests are.
Yeah.
And so, how can that be physical lineage if it's only a physical lineage? And so when Jesus, gives it to Peter and gives it to the 12, the other 11 at that point, that becomes spiritual through Jesus, who has been God the whole time, right? This wasn't a secret. It wasn't like, I'm God. Like, no.
Right.
He has been, is, and will always be God. And so, yeah, it becomes a spiritual lineage.
Yeah, and that's kind of what gives the priests the authority going down the line to pray for the bread and the wine.
They become the new 12 tribe. You see that also in Revelation, right? When John is looking and he sees the 12 patriarchs and the 12 elders. Well, the patriarchs are obviously the 12 tribes of Israel. 12 tribes who are the elders. The common consensus is the 12 apostles, but minus 12 apostles, because it's not Judas. It would be Matthias.
Matthias instead.
It would be Matthias.
Yeah. That's Ozzy's middle name. That's who he's named after.
That's your child.
The bonus apostle.
Yeah.
As I like to call Matthias.
Yeah. And
So
you see
how
it.
does that look practically to you? Do you imagine then, like, if the Protestant world kind of comes to like reckoning with this concept of the sanctity of the Eucharist, like is it just people showing up for like confession and uh mass? Like that's it. Is there any other way to like transfer it? Like I think I might have said this to you, but it was kind of a funny thing, but an honest question. If I take this bucket of host in their little cups to a priest and have him pray for it, like would that be good enough then to be handed out at the Protestant church?
I mean, I guess the host might, if it's unleavened, but the juice itself, I think it's juice.
Yeah,
Right? It has to be wine.
it has to be wine.
It has to be wine. And unleavened bread.
Isn't like grape juice like just unfermented?
It's not fermented enough.
Not old enough. That's amazing. Okay, so I didn't know that. I didn't know that it like needed to be.
There are
wine.
rubrics for it.
So
Yeah.
what's up with and this is kind of a side tangent, but going to mass lately, that you don't see the chalice being offered to the congregation very often.
Yeah. So
What's up with that?
it's not necessary. I'll answer this question, and then I'll try to return to your initial question of what it looks like.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. I'm glad
You
you're
said
keeping
you
track.
don't see it. Get off.
This is.
Oh, it's one. It's post COVID,
Yeah. That. Okay.
so
Fair
that's a
enough.
thing. But also, it's not necessary. You don't have to take it. The idea that you have to take it is a heresy called Eucharist, which means you have to receive the host body and the host blood to receive Jesus. But that's not what we believe. We believe that the Eucharist itself is holy body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ. And so you are receiving both the body and the blood upon eating, whether just the host body or drinking the blood, like either or.
Okay. Yeah. So go back to the original then. What does it look like? What is that? Is that something that a priest would do? Would
No.
that solve the problem?
No, a priest would not consecrate the host, let you bring it to a Protestant church. I have
Sorry.
honestly thought about it.
I felt like a good solution to me, honestly. Like it was a good end around to getting
The problem is,
getting the divinity to
well, here's the thing. The problem with that would be, the people there either don't that it's body, blood, soul, and divinity of Christ, or they're going to be Catholic or Orthodox.
yeah. So then they would just go to mass anyway.
Yeah.
And that's a good point.
Like if a priest brought a host to our Protestant ecclesial community, consecrated it, and I was able to receive while y'all were taking your cups, be fine, but y'all couldn't take my Eucharist.
Yeah. And now I think that one thing that like there's a lot of like contention because of all of the like the standards, the rules, there's a lot of like exclusionary, like, with the divorce. I think that people have a lot of problems with that. And the confession, there's these moments that I'm thinking just off the top of my head where there's like big differences between, Catholicism and Protestantism.
For that, I don't like being harsh, but I think that is one of the problems with Protestantism as a thing. Meaning, because you have no authority outside of your local, and then, I mean, they might have friends who are pastors and like who help them out. But because he's the only authority, things kind of go the way he wants. And over time, things have changed. The Catholic Church is the only Christian sect still is against contraception. Totally. And that was the case for all types of Christians, whether it's Protestant, Orthodox, Catholic, until like Roe v. Wade. All Christians were against contraception. But now some churches are not, and it's kind of left up to your conviction. Do you do it or do you not do it?
There's always that creeping line of morality. I think that, like, you know, and it makes me think of like the Hellenistic Jews, you know, versus the
Giving into the world, yeah.
Yeah, it's this slow kind of surrender to a different way of life. And I think that that's kind of where like the rubber meets the road with all of this, in my opinion. Like, and that's why when you and I talk about this, or when I have a friend out in Kansas that he and I have heart to hearts a lot about, like, you know, he's constantly, you know, kind of harping on me to make sure I'm still going to mass and still going to confession, and you know, he holds it very important. And you know, I think when I'm there and when I'm taking part in the tradition, and you know, the utility of all of the structure and weight of having thousands and thousands of years of tradition stacked on top of what I'm doing, it just gives it a level of validity that you know, goes far beyond, you know, just a kind of a lecture with good music. And I hate to, like, I think that, you know, God's presence, and this is something that we talked about a little bit too. It's like within the Catholic Church that there are these opportunities to express yourself in to be in God's presence in a different way.
See, in the Catholic Church, we're giving of ourselves in the way that He's asked us forever, right? And you just said it. You just said it about a lecture with good music. It's kind of all low church Protestantism is.
Yeah, and I don't want to reduce it to that, because I don't want to like take out the notion that God's presence is involved in that.
I'm not saying that either. But liturgically speaking, the way it works is it's good music, if it's your taste, like, and a lecture. That's all that there is to it. The point of that was to say, right, that's all the liturgical stuff there is. But there's a song. Sure, you know it.
Yeah, I think I know
there's
what
a line in the song that says, "What the enemy made for evil, you turn for good." Was that the song you thought I was
No,
about?
I thought you were going to bring up the religion.
Oh, I hate. Don't even. Like, no.
I know. I really thought that's what you were going to refer to. That's
no,
why I started laughing.
I'm trying to talk positively.
Because of how much you hate that.
I hate that song. Like, that song from the pit of hell.
So
That song does not belong in any type of Christian church.
your reaction to it every time makes me laugh.
I fight to
Oh my
not leave
gosh.
Paris.
It's
church,
it's great
building.
when we play that song, and like I just imagine you. It just makes me chuckle every single time, because I don't think that's like all the way what she means. It is in a little bit, but
They're the
anyway.
walls of all my tradition.
Yeah.
Break away all my religion. Religion is how you relate to God. Tradition is how He gave it to you.
I know. I hate that part too, because I don't think it's saying what she thinks it's saying. Yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
Anyway,
what were the positive lyrics that you were?
What the enemy made for evil, you turn for good.
Yeah.
You know what song I'm talking about?
I don't think so. Not off the top
What
of my
the
head.
enemy made for evil, you turned it for good. I can't sing,
That was pretty good.
but like, those are the lyrics,
Okay, fair enough.
and it's true. I believe 100% that Martin Luther needed some psychiatric help.
That's some bold words out here on the airwaves.
He needed psychiatric help. And there are some saints that have in their writings that they saw hell and Martin Luther is burning.
No way.
That's in some Catholic writings, yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, there's a lot of times like when like the Reformation is celebrated in that book that I was reading, and it's got a lot of really cool stuff in it. But
How to Worship a King
yeah,
is the book he's referring to.
yeah, and you there was another part toward the end of it too that he was celebrating the Reformation, and I was thinking so much like, and when you and I kind of talked about it, it was so funny. It was like why couldn't it just be resolved within?
Because
Like,
Martin Luther
he
wanted to be the Pope.
Yeah, wanted schism so badly, and I think that the warning against schism is so appropriate.
Do not. It's literally okay. So the first, and then I'll go back to it. The first ever catechism is called the Didache. In it, it says, "Do not commit schism."
Yeah,
It also says, "Do not commit abortion." And do not do a lot of stuff that is kind of normal in today's zeitgeist. But anyways, the point is, Martin Luther definitely needed psychiatric help. Probably was demonically oppressed. I'm not saying he was possessed. I'm saying he was oppressed. He just didn't want to work with people. He didn't want to do what he needed to do.
but such a popular movement came out of that. Like, and a lot of times people want to make the argument is if it wasn't of God, it wouldn't continue to exist.
But then I would also point to the people who say that. Take a look at the way the culture is. Take a look at the other religions in the world. Like, I'm driving on my way over here, but the amount of Muslims that I saw driving over here
Oh yeah,
in this area, dude, the things that they believe were heresies condemned in the 300s. Everything they believed was condemned prior to Muhammad being a person.
yeah. Well, and then you would say, then there's like 2 billion of them. Must be right. If there's 2 billion people believing in the same power structure and belief structure.
The problem with that is Islam is the fastest growing because they keep having babies, like Catholics should be.
Like Catholics are trying. Yeah.
But their adults are leaving in droves for Christianity.
Yeah, totally.
Because Jesus keeps showing up and he's like, "Yo, I'm God," and they're like, "Oh, you're God."
Obviously.
So it's just like their adults keep leaving, and so that they don't surpass Christianity, I guess. Anyways, back to the other Satan story.
I don't even remember exactly where we left off with that. I think that's
God. Like, if it wasn't of God, why would it have grown?
Oh, right. Yeah, that's
the problem is with that, and I pointed Muslim, right?
Yeah,
the Reformation itself, definitely. It's not even called the Reformation. It's called the Protestant Revolt because he revolted. He didn't reform anything. The phrase Protestant Reformation makes it sound like
it's a good thing.
Protestants reformed the Catholic. That's what it sounds like. That's not what happened. Martin Luther revolted.
Yeah, and started.
We set up the Council of Trent to deal with his problem, to fix it, to help him, to help all of us, to actually reform the problems of the Catholic Church.
Yeah, because there were problems, admittedly.
Yeah, but any human-run institution will.
Yeah, over time, that the slow leak. So, was there anything about the Eucharist within his original?
Remember how I mentioned about the different views of the Eucharist?
Yeah,
he even said it. He said it himself. He's like, "Yeah, I know that the majority of all of Christianity has viewed it as it is fully body, blood, soul, and divinity Christ. But I think it's more like it's still bread and wine. We just dipped it in Jesus." He didn't say dipped it in Jesus. Those are my words.
And we leave off there for now. Thank you for coming to this episode, and we'll see you next week. God bless.